Fellow Nigerians, as it is no longer news that we have lost to passing into the ancestral place, one of our finest literary and intellectual giants, Professor Pius Adesanmi. I have decided, for the benefit of many who have not met him before, bring forward one of the video clips that I have of him. A lecture, public lecture that I personally was there and enjoyed the way the intellectual properties wafted across the room of the NECA House at Alausa in Ikeja, Lagos. Professor Pius Adesanmi was the keynote speaker who delivered the 53rd Independence Anniversary Lecture on Nigeria at the program organized by the Center for Change Civil Society organization on October 15th, 2013, and that would be roughly 5 years plus now. The lecture was titled Boda Nigeria, Prof, Naija and Soul Tinz. Without wasting your time and without any attempt to hijack the speech by the keynote speech maker by himself, I will hurry out of the scene now, out of your screen, and allow you savor, for the benefit of those that have not met him or those that have met him before, to enjoy this moment yet again. Professor Pius Adesanmi.
Things. Nigeria, the country on whose account we are gathered here today for a feast of reflections, is older than me. This age gap imposes certain protocols of interaction in my culture. I cannot enter into any kind of engagement or social interaction with Nigeria without deploying modes of discourse and honorific markers that would immediately alert speakers of my language to issues of age seniority between me and my addressee. However, in this scenario of elderhood and seniority, Nigeria is not old enough to be my father. Hence, in saluting him within the context of my culture, I cannot call him Baba or Daddy like I would every adult male within my father's generational bracket in Isolu, my hometown in Kogi State. With Daddy or Baba Nigeria out of the question, what my culture expects of me in saluting this elder of mine who recently turned 53 is to say, Boda Nigeria, Eku Ojo Ibi o, Igba Odun. Thank you. For those of you who don't speak Yoruba, this translates roughly as Brother Nigeria. Happy birthday to you all. Many happy returns. Unfortunately, the Yoruba greeting does not have hip 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 hooray. If I was speaking in the presence of Nigeria's teeming youth, those millions of restless energies under the age of 30 that one encounters on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and other social media, I sort of constitute a bridge between that generation and the older generation. So I still have their mannerisms, I have their swagger. Well, if I was talking in the presence of that generation, I would not say Boda Nigeria. Nigerians 30 years old and below would consider me an unsophisticated village old school if I said Boda Nigeria. For that generation, I would have to say, Bros Niger, how is your birthday things? We're still saying the same thing. It's just a question of generations. But let me stress the point again, that Boda Nigeria is obligatory in my case only because our subject is older than me. Looking across this room, I see many people who cannot possibly call Nigeria Boda. I'm not saying that they are old, but there's a different cultural warrant for how they would felicitate with Nigeria in my language. Such people will tell Nigeria, Aburo, Kuojo Ibio. Pastor Baka, I'm not sure. We had your own birthday when last I was here. So maybe you'll say Aburo or maybe Ore, depending on your mood. Aburo, yeah, technically. But let's return to my own case. Having done the right thing, the Omoluabi thing, by felicitating with an elder brother on the occasion of his 53rd birthday, having said, Boda Nigeria Eko Ojo Ibio, my culture does not expect me to stop there. Let me remind you all that this culture is notorious for having the widest range of salutations in the widest scenarios imaginable. This is a culture that has a formulaic echo greeting for everything and every activity under the sun, including doing nothing. This culture even has a greeting, and wait for this one. She even has a greeting, Eku Idita, for an elder who farts in the presence of children. When a culture takes politeness to the extreme of sympathizing with the behind of an elder who farts, you can imagine that the said culture would not expect me to say happy birthday to a 53-year-old and leave it at that. There's a whole range of equal rituals that are designed to reflect the totality of the condition and life experiences of the celebrant. My culture expects me to take a long, good, hard, and thorough look at Boda Nigeria and tailor the next set of salutations to mirror his physical and developmental condition. So, looking at the shape and condition of Nigeria today, after 53 years of post-colonial existence, my culture makes it incumbent on me to greet and sympathize with him thus. And here, again, is a set of greetings. And you will have to answer on behalf of Boda Nigeria. Now, mind you, these greetings are very tough. So, separate yourselves mentally. It's not you, okay? Separate yourselves mentally from our subject. Our subject is an abstraction now. It's Boda Nigeria. So that you'll be able to provide the appropriate response. So it's not you, always remember that. And so to each response, to each greeting, your answer on behalf of the celebrant shall be O. Okay, let me hear you. O. One more time. O. Boda Nigeria, ẹ kú ọjọ́ ìbí o. Ẹ kú ìrọ́jú o. Ẹ kú àmúmọ́ra o. Ẹ kú òfò o. Èdùmàrè àfòfò rẹ̀ mí o. Okay. As some of you already know, I prefer anecdotal ports of entry into these kinds of benumbing inquiries. My most remarkable encounter with the idea of the soul of a nation, the soul of a country, happened in faraway Ottawa, where Canadians will say Ottawa, but I'm trying to keep the Nigerian thing, so I say Ottawa, where I live and work. Although Ottawa is the capital city of Canada, the soul I encountered on this particular day was not Canadian. You see, before moving to Ottawa in 2006, I had been an assistant professor of comparative literature at the Pennsylvania State University in the United States. I was there for 5 years, during which that great American university kindly filed for my permanent residency in America. Within 1 year of my stay in Pennsylvania, I had become a proud owner of something most Nigerians love more than Nigeria, an American green card. Although I subsequently got the Canadian permanent residency card on moving to Ottawa in 2006, and was soon on the track to becoming a Canadian citizen, I was reluctant to part with my US green card. So I did wuru-wuru to the answer and pretended not to know that I ought to just relinquish it, you know. For 2 years, nothing happened. So I kept it. I went in and out of the US frequently. I'm always in the lecture circuit in American universities, using that card, even though I was now resident in Canada. I persuaded myself that I was still technically employed in the US. After all, Penn State had refused my resignation and kept on to me as a non-salaried adjunct professor. When I was leaving, they said instead of resigning, we'll create some document that you'll sign every year as a roving professor, so that whenever you wanted to come back, you know, you can always just leave the Canadians and come back to Penn State. So I said, okay, technically I can keep this thing because, you know, I'm still there. However, after 2 years, my green card began to be flagged at US ports of entry. US Customs and Immigration officials would swipe the card and ask me why I was holding on to it when I was clearly no longer living in the US. I would mumble inaudible and incoherent replies, and they would let me in, advising me to make up my mind. Now, this is where, in those societies, you know, being a university professor still carries enormous, it's like what it used to be here in the 60s and 70s, you know. It's been replaced by wealth and material acquisitions now, but in Canada and the US, when they swipe and they see professor, okay, keep it, but make up your mind. They wouldn't do that. So the prestige is still there and one benefits from it. So they advised me to make up my mind. Come back to the US and keep the card, or let's have it and stay in Canada. Naturally, I would ignore their advice. Things got to a head when I was going to Johannesburg to accept the Penguin Prize for African Writing in 2010, and my flight from Ottawa was routed through New York. I nearly missed the flight to Johannesburg because of the wahala generated by that green card. Once again, I got away with an advice to make up my mind. I knew then that once I returned from Johannesburg, I had to go to the American embassy in Ottawa to give up the green card. I didn't need it anymore anyway. I was going to become a Canadian citizen that same month. You'd think that giving up an American green card would be a simple process. Just walk into an embassy and toss Uncle Sam's property back at him. Not so? If that's what you think, you have another thing coming. As I found out, giving up an American green card can be even tougher than obtaining one. For starters, there are no consular appointments for those wishing to give up a green card. So I had to apply for a US visa that I wouldn't need as a Canadian citizen, just to gain entrance to the embassy. So a visa appointment was the only way to gain access to the reinforced bunker called the US Embassy in Ottawa. On the appointed day, I was ushered into the visa area after clearing security. Everything was what you would expect in an American embassy. The regular throng of colored humanity, Africans, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Indians, Arabs, all the usual suspects with their cacophony of accents. They were there, each waiting for his or her turn to be summoned to the little window screen by imperious American visa officers scarcely out of college. Then came my turn. Everything went very smoothly, and a 10-year multiple entry visa was promptly approved for me. Oh, there is something else, I told the friendly visa officer. He was friendly, of course, again after determining that I'm a university professor. I want to give up this green card. How do I go about it? I said, tossing the card at him, just under the window. His face and countenance changed. Oh, you have a green card? Why did you come for a visa? And wait a minute, you want to give up your green card? He asked, staring incredulously at me from behind his thick bulletproof cubicle. I answered in the affirmative. Sir, you want to give up your American privileges? He asked again, his bewilderment making him forget to close his wide open jaws. Yes, I answered again, coolly. He examined the card for a long time, disbelief and consternation etching patches of sweat on his forehead. He looked at me again, mouth still wide open, shock for closing the possibility of speech. Form, the unhappy consular officer had scribbled something in his handwriting. Mr. Adesanmi fully understands the consequences of abandoning his permanent resident card and the American privileges thereof. And then he asked me to sign under what he had written. I signed. Privileges. Privileges. Consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my moment of epiphany. As they say in America, I got it. I understood what was going on. I'm going to draw very heavy conclusions from this story. Fast forward to November 2012. I flew to Nigeria to deliver 2 major lectures. Remember that at this point, I had become a dual citizen of Nigeria and Canada, carrying the passports of both countries and using them as appropriate in the destinations to which I travel. Needless to say, on arrival at Murtala Mohammed International Airport, I presented my Nigerian passport at immigration. Everything was going on well. The usual tired, irritable, and dour immigration officers who gave you a feeling they'd rather be anywhere else but at work. As this particular officer flipped through the pages of my Nigerian passport, looking for where to place her stamp and append her signature, she asked me the regular questions. As I made to bend over a little to engage her, my Canadian passport, which was in the outer breast pocket of my long-sleeve shirt, fell onto her counter. As her eyes fell on that foreign passport, her countenance changed. The moodiness vanished, replaced by a glint of excitement in her face. She grabbed the Canadian passport, examined it preciously like she was handling pure diamond, and exclaimed, "Ah, Oga, you get this one too?" "Yes, oh, madam, na dual citizen I be," I replied. "What do you don't see they carry this one do?" Guess which of the passports she was holding? The green passport. "What do you don't see they take this one do?" she asked, ignoring my remark about dual citizenship, and waving my Nigerian passport in the air before tossing it at me like something that had suddenly acquired the capacity to contaminate her hands with leprosy. Needless to say, when handing over the Canadian passport to me, she treated it with elegance and delicacy. As she waved me on, I couldn't help thinking that she considered me an idiot who had a cap but no head to deck on it, she being the sage who had a head but no cap to deck on it. Mind you, we are talking about an experienced immigration officer who, apart from being obviously aware of the reality of dual citizenship for many Nigerians in the diaspora, must have stamped thousands of British, American, French, Irish, German, Australian, Japanese, South African, Ghanaian, Afghan, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Iraqi, and Indian passports presented to her by Nigerians with dual citizenship of those countries. Yeah, sometimes we go to Iraq to apply for citizenship. So, what happened to her when she beheld my Canadian passport? I'll tell you. It was one unguarded, unself-conscious moment in which professional carapace collapses and a window is unintentionally opened into the soul of a uniformed Nigerian citizen. And when we look into the soul of this uniformed citizen through the window afforded us by her outburst and facial expression as she queried the wisdom of hanging onto one of the most important symbols of Nigerian citizenship, of which, ironically, her department is custodian. What do we see mirrored in her soul about Nigeria? We need to go back to our friend at the American Embassy in Ottawa and try to understand what exactly his own American soul plugged into, connected with, at that improbable moment of encounter with an accented African's rejection of America. "You're giving up your American privileges?" he had screamed, unable to believe what was happening. The key word, my friends, is privileges. We see it in the totality of the American aesthetic. This is the same thing you see and feel when the German soul is expressed in the expression we all commonly throw around as German efficiency or the German machine. American privilege, German efficiency. These spiritualities derive their performative power and appeal precisely because of their ability to mobilize the citizenry. Patriotism is not what mobilizes the citizen. Patriotism is merely the outward gestural expression of a collectively imagined ideal, the higher essence we have agreed to graft onto our perspectivizations of the nation with a view to letting it define us collectively. A country fashions her soul around the privilege of belonging and ingrains this in the individual souls of her citizens. When a citizen of such a country encounters the surreal scene in which the passport or the permanent residency card of that country is being relinquished, such a citizen is plunged into the anguish of disbelief. No, this cannot happen. No one gives up on America. That was not an American citizen talking to me in Ottawa. That was the soul of America gyrating. Apologies to our Kegite friends if they are in this room. Gyrating very loudly in that embassy. On the contrary, the Nigerian immigration officer who thought I was crazy to hold on to my Nigerian passport is a uniform. Just a uniform in search of that central unifying ideal that would have been the soul of the Nigerian nation. If you look closely at things, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't always this way with us. It shouldn't ever have had to be this way. Really. Nigeria has no business being an atrophied, decaying giant groping blindly in the dark in search of a soul at 53. No. Nigeria is what she is today, the open soul of the black race. Wole Soyinka calls her the open soul of a continent. Excuse me. Because of the absence of a transcendental national ideal, which at once collectively defines us, is deemed sacrosanct and bigger than any and all of us. In the part of the world where I earn my daily bread, I earn it in Ghana now, but I'm talking about it is common for public officials to sacrifice personal ambition, renounce the claim to public office, or even resign whenever personal ambition and gain are deemed to be in the way of the collective ideal which defines the nation. You hear that, no, I can't do that to France. Oh, I can't do that to America. Oh, I can't do that to Canada, because, it's because there's that ideal that's bigger than you and bigger than all of us. It happens when there is a soul. Because Nigeria lacks this ideal, it is easy for her politicians and civil servants to loot her blind without betraying anything. So you have to understand where that impunity of corruption is coming from. There is no soul. You're not betraying a soul. You cannot betray what isn't there. Where a nation has no soul, you are not betraying anything by hurting her. You could wreck her infrastructure through corruption, destroy her refineries, wreck her national airlines, destroy her national shipping lines, restore her railway to Second World War locomotive standards in the 21st century, destroy her universities, spend $16 billion to import darkness, and all you'll get are people complaining that they have been marginalized from the theater of wrecking and destruction because there is no soul to which we are all beholding. No damage is unimaginable or too crude to be inflicted on a nation which has no soul. If the state constantly negotiates with and makes space for difference in the West, she must do so even more urgently in Africa and in Nigeria in particular. After all, Obano they go transfer, as we say. Igbira, Ogoni, Tiv, Idoma, Jukun, Nupe, Birom, Edo, Ishekiri, Ijo, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Fulani, and some 200 other ethnicities were here jeje before Nigeria came and rammed national borders and the collective national identity down their throats. They were here before she came. They are not going anywhere. Obano, they go transfer, and Nigeria had better wake up and smell the coffee. The same demographic who are all over social media and all over the spaces of popular culture, unknowingly articulating something that could become the transcendental ideal and the soul of Nigeria. Listen to these young citizens in situations of banter and socializing. Whenever a Nigerian excels in something negative or mischievous, whether it's Yahoo Yahoo or a 20-year-old boy marrying a 60-year-old white grandma for pali purposes, you are likely to hear Nigerians, young Nigerians, exclaim amidst laughter, "Che, Naija no dey carry last." Let's hear that again. Naija again. Yeah. There, right there is the seed of an idea that could become an ideal, our defining national soul. Naija no dey do waiting. All we need do is relocate it from the sites of mischief and deprecating humor and turn it into something as serious as America and her privileges for the American, or something as serious, as solemn as liberty, equality, and fraternity for the French. Retrieving an existing slogan from popular culture and sending it on more serious errands of national identity making is, of course, not enough to invent a soul for a country in ruins. If we limited ourselves to just that, sloganeering, we would merely be reinventing Dora Akunyili's wheels of rebranding. A top-down, money-grubbing fancy of the elite, which, like Ibrahim Babangida's Mamsa before it, stood no chance of even remotely being able to mobilize the people. Only the youth could find it within themselves to recalibrate that message. Don't underestimate them. They built Nollywood out of nothing. And in Nigeria's harsh climate, they reinvented music and made American gangster rap and R&B totally irrelevant in our party halls. We don't dance those things anymore. They won the Nations Cup despite the oasis of disorganization and inefficiency that is the Nigerian Football Federation. Everywhere you turn, the youth of Nigeria are excelling despite Nigeria. Despite all the odds stacked against them, all they really need to become the catalyst for the invention of a Nigerian soul, and the one really urgent task of the moment is a recalibration of the message contained in something they utter and ingest every day. Naija no dey carry last. It is only when this message is allowed to transcend our differences in a rejuvenated and redesigned federal structure, itself another level of struggle, that we shall be able to rise, united by the immense power of our differences and diversity, and sing that song of ours in its real and true dimension. Wena oh, wena, wena oh, wena Nigeria you don't win, wena pata pata you